For the Mario character, we also have several other interactive options. We can push an object. So for instance, if I create a cube here. So if we were to create a cube, maybe we'll make the cube a little bit larger here. And then for the cube, in terms of being able to push the object, it needs to be dynamic. So we need to change the component option. We need to add a rigid body to it. The rigid body will add the gravity that we need, so it's going to build that fall down and be moved around. On the Mario character, the character itself has a layer mask. This can be the push layers. The push layers is actually an option for you to choose which layer it can actually push against. We have two options. One is dynamic, so he can simply just push against it, and then the push option is kind of a twofold. There's a push layer and a push tag. Both are available so that the character can go into a push animation state to push the object. Alright, so for the box, if we decide to just choose the dynamic layer to start with, for the character, if we just decide to play this one, the character will be able to push against this and be able to move the box around. Now, notice how the box kind of moves rough as it moves around. And if we wanted to constrain it, for instance, we could actually go into the rigid body of the cube. We could take the freeze rotation. We could actually turn the freeze rotation on. With the freeze rotation on, when he pushes, it actually pushes pretty smooth because it's just pushing in a translated position. And you have to actually get on each side of the box to move it. So very common for a game. Now notice though, in terms of pushing like this doesn't really seem as realistic because he's just pushing against it without actually looking like it. You can do two things. You can either change the layer, and or you could just change the tag. For instance, I could go to the tag even while it's playing, and I could go down to push. If the box is labeled push, then when the player runs against it this time, he actually goes into his push state. And the collision, if you notice, is a little bit too close, so his hands are going into it. But it does provide that sense of pushing that you want to have for the player. A quick way around that, just to show it here, is on the box collider. Let's go ahead and go to the cube. For the box collider, we'll just do one side so you can see it. I can actually push the collision out just a little bit further than it needs to be. That way, when the player actually pushes against it, he'll be a little bit closer to having his hands right where they should be. So then it looks like he's actually pushing the crate. Alright. So along with pushing the crate, the player can also grab an object and pull it up to him. So for instance, let's take this object again, and we'll go ahead, instead of tagging it with the push, there's one called grab. If you click on the grab option and then make sure that the dynamics is set on layer, you could also set, which I'll show in a second, you can set push, but if it's set to dynamic and it's set to grab, that's going to let the player know that when he comes up and he pushes his action button, so when I push my action button, I believe that is going to be shift on the keyboard, he'll actually pick up the box. The box is a little bit too heavy for him right here, like a little too big. So let's go ahead and make the size that the animation is set for, which is pretty much just your regular cube size. So if we take a regular box, and this is where when you're actually setting it up, you want to make sure that you have the parts and pieces set in place for it. For instance, when you're animating the cube moving up, you'll animate it based on the object itself. For this one though, we'll do tag and set the tag to grab and layer to dynamic. Alright, so for this one, when I grab this, he'll actually pick it up. So then he's holding the crate, and then he walks a little bit slower with it, and when he gets ready to throw it, he can throw it. So the whole motion itself could be a ton more interactive. He could actually like pick it up, maybe spin it on his hand and then toss it above him, or any type of animation you want to stick into that place of it. Alright. So that works, but notice that the box now, when I push it, the box doesn't actually let me do a push motion. If you switch the dynamic layer to push, then that's going to allow him to play his push animation as well as his pickup animation. So if you wanted him to be able to do one or the other, or have him do both, he'd be able to do both. And the throw. Alright. So that's going to be the push. The other option we have is going to be this is just simply a jump pad. If you have an object tagged jump pad, for this one, if I move into the box, my character's velocity. Let's be sure that the jump pad on the box collider is set for a trigger. Okay. And let's make sure we take rigid body off. There we go. So we'll have the box collider is trigger. When you run over it, it's going to just bounce him up like a standard jump pad would. Alright, and currently it's just based off of his current forward velocity, his moving direction, and a height. However, you could actually base it onto a particular direction. Maybe when he hits it, you only want it to fly him over to the left. Then you could set the velocity to just check for the left only. Alright, so that's going to be the character's basic jump pad form. The other one is going to be a moving object, and I have a prefab for that one just so that we don't have to set it up. But the prefab looks like this one. Okay, notice the very top piece right here. The top piece is actually just a box collider, and the tag for it is platform. That's all it actually has to be, is just simply platform. The object below it has a animation assigned to it, which is just moving. It's going to move left and right on a ping pong type curve. So we will play this one. And the cool thing with this one is when you jump on top, notice what happens when the character jumps on top. He stays inside of your hierarchy. In the box orange, it actually switches the player's Mario. He becomes parented to the box. And then when we move the character off of it, the character is now unlinked from the parent of this one, becomes parented back out again. This part of it, this is something that, and I actually just kind of noticed from here, we actually have him not going back to character. You could actually have him assigned back to the character when he's off of this. But what this does is just allow you to actually have a nice solid control for the character. If I do jump up, like when it's moving, when I jump up, he actually does jump off, so he has to be within that little box range. The box itself could be larger if you want, so that he stays even if he's jumping on top of it. Alright, and then the last one that we have, I believe it's on a tag here. Let's see. Yeah, we have a kill zone option. So on this one, let's say for instance I create another box. Move this a little bit further down here. Okay, so this could be the ground, this could be a wall. It could also indicate a hurt device versus just a kill device. But if I tag it as the kill zone, what it's going to do to start with, all it's doing is basing it on, you could do a check where it's actually going to check for character's spawn point. What we're doing is just basing it off the character's initial starting point. So, make sure that we have his trigger on there. And what this is going to do is just allow you to, when you run into it, it's actually going to count 2 seconds because it's going to hide the character, move the character, redraw the character, and then it gives you time to provide like a particle, a sound effect, and things to start up. So if the character was to walk off the world, then you would have a nice kill zone box that would just take the character back to the starting point. Alright. And let's go ahead and do 2 more things. If we had we'll just do a sphere here. Sphere, if we actually tag it with a trigger, and then we make the tag itself called coin, If this is called coin, then over here on our GUI, we just have a very simple GUI here. This means that we can come by and pick it up, and our coin is now 1. Very simple inventory. It's just collecting coins and keys, and then it's checking for amount of keys to open up objects. This one then could also be called, here, we'll just make a second one here. Alright, so this one, we could actually call this one a key. So we can collect a coin, gives us one, we collect a key, and it gives us one as well. And the objects are actually just running a short script inside the player controller so that the object is added to the GUI, and then the object itself is deleted. Alright, now we have several others in terms of interaction based on enemies and NPC players. We're going to look at those inside a separate scene, but just for now though, these are all the basic moves, the basic things for the character. This is all the things that we're going to be building up on.